Next, we have Professor Karen Mills from Harvard Business School.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Karen Mills, and prior to my time at Harvard Business School, I had the honor of working for President Obama as a member of his cabinet and as the head of the Small Business Administration. And now I'm delighted to be teaching entrepreneurship here at HBS to Section J, some of whom are here. Oh, and Section D last year, yes. It's a great place. So here at Harvard Business School, we teach using the case method, and each case is a story. And last week we did a case about Gabriela Gomez-Montt. And she runs an innovation lab in Mexico City, within the Mexico City government. And it's her job to solve large and difficult public problems using new thinking. We actually call it public entrepreneurship. Now, one of the problems she faced in Mexico City is that they had 30,000 buses. They have 30,000 buses, but there is no route map. There is no schedule. In fact, there's no way to know which bus goes where or when one is going to come by. So Gabriela Gomez-Montt did something pretty interesting. She crowdsourced the solution. She got 3,000 people to ride the buses and document their routes, and within 2 weeks, she had a map of about half the routes in the city. It was a bold solution. It had some political risk, but she was an entrepreneur. Now, one lesson you can take from this case is that entrepreneurship is not just a way to create a multi-billion-dollar company in Silicon Valley, but it's also a way to solve some of society's most difficult problems and contribute to the public good. But entrepreneurship is about something else as well. It's about taking risk. It's about imagining an outcome that is big, that is larger than the resources that you have, and then figuring out how to get there. It's about leading when the outcome is uncertain. So for me, entrepreneurship is personal. My grandpa Jack came to this country as an immigrant at the turn of the century with nothing. And he built a business that provided for his family and his extended family and created hundreds of jobs. Grandpa Jack's story is the story of the American dream. And he used to say to me, Karen, you know, our family doesn't work for other people, we work for ourselves. But when I graduated from HBS in 1977, I was not interested in entrepreneurship because I was not ready to take any risk. Now, some of you, I'm sure, have a certain positive feeling about getting a job with a salary that will pay the student loans. And there's very good reason to want to go that direction. But as you go forward in your career, as researchers, as lawyers and doctors and other professionals, other opportunities, new opportunities are going to present themselves. And some of them will feel risky. Watch for those moments. Prepare for them. Because even though they present challenges, they might be the ones, as we just heard, that offer the most impact. Eventually, I found a way to follow Grandpa Jack's advice. I became a venture capitalist. For 25 years, I bought and grew companies, one of which you, I hope, know, Annie's Macaroni and Cheese. Maybe somebody's eaten some. So we bought that company when it was just 8 people and Annie. Venture capital can be magical, but it is also risky. So how do you navigate in a risky and uncertain world? And This is the secret that I kind of came here to tell you. The secret lies in figuring out early on who you are and what matters to you. Now, life is going to throw a lot of things at you, opportunities and challenges, but what separates out the successful people is that they understand at every turn what their values are. Like, how do you balance your work, your family, your community? How do you treat others every day? If you're confident in your values and what you think is important, you will stay level-headed. And I have a word for this. I call it being balanced on your own 2 feet. Now, I told you that I spent 5 years in Washington, D.C., that I worked for President Obama as a member of his cabinet, the head of the SBA. It was an incredible job. I got to travel on Air Force One with the president, and I got to be the person in the West Wing who brought the perspective of a risk taker and an entrepreneur to help America's small businesses survive what was one of the most difficult credit crises in our history. And it was a great job. So everyone asks me, so how'd you get that job? How'd you get on that path? And I say, there was no path. There was actually no plan. What happened in hindsight was a turning point. 20 years of venture capital in New York City, and one day I come home and my husband says, I have a job offer. I have the offer to be the president of Bowdoin College in Maine. So we pick up 3 kids and we move from downtown Manhattan to a rural town in Maine. And then one day something surprising happened. The Naval Air Station in my town went on the base closure list. And we were going to lose 3,000 jobs. So I get a phone call from the governor. It's a very small state. And he says, Karen, you're supposed to do something. You're a venture capitalist. I didn't have any idea what I was supposed to do or what he was talking about or where to begin. But I looked out my window and I could see the Naval Air Station from my house. And I knew my town faced an uncertain future. And I thought, if I don't do something, who will? That started a long chain of events that ended up with me on President Obama's transition team and eventually as the president's appointee to head the SBA. So it was December 2008. I flew out to Chicago for the press conference in the Drake Hotel. He was going to announce my nomination along with several other cabinet members. Now, these other cabinet members, they had all been politicians. So although this was a big day for all of us, they were a little more used to this kind of thing. We step out onto the stage. There were about 100 camera crews. The lights were blazing. It was hot, and I was nervous. And I thought, I'm going to faint. And my husband is watching on television at home in Maine, and he says, I was sure you were going down. So we took our positions behind the president, and you've seen this. It's called the potted plant position. And you have to stand there for about 20 minutes because you're in the shot, and you can't move. And I'm standing there, and the president-elect opens his remarks with what's called a topper. And a topper is the thing they hand the president right before he goes on. It's something that is happening right now. And the topper that day was, should he bail out the auto industry? Now you have to remember, it was a very uncertain time. We were already in a deep recession. There was a real fear that the auto industry would fail, that the entire economy would crumble. And the president-elect was talking about small businesses and suppliers and the surrounding community. And I thought to myself, you need to get a grip. This is not about you. This is about the jobs and the livelihood of millions of people. And you actually know what needs to be done. You've trained for this when you were at HBS, when you were in the private sector, when you were in Maine. So it's time to step up and do the work that's needed for your country. Today, we're again living in an uncertain time. So I have a challenge for all of you. Just the way that Grandpa Jack and the governor and this last job challenged me. You are Harvard graduate students, trained at an extraordinary university. You have the power and the intelligence and the responsibility to make a difference. So, find your values, find your balance, because it's up to each of you in your own way to be leaders in this demanding world. Now, your path may not always be linear or risk-free, but sometimes there's a moment where you're going to have to step up and do the work that your community and your nation and the world needs. It is by stepping up in uncertain times like these that you will provide the leadership that will make a difference in the world. Thank you.